This is the Car Wash Advisory Podcast, your go-to source for stories, strategies, and insights featuring some of the largest leaders in the industry. Let's dive right in.
Hi, everybody, and thank you so much for tuning in. This is Harry Caruso, founder of Car Wash Advisory, and I'm here today with Mark Sage of Merchant Advocate for an exciting conversation. Mark, thanks so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
So, this is a bit unusual in terms of your service offering, Mark, is not specific to car wash, but you have done a pretty tremendous job penetrating the car wash industry as it currently stands. So, for listeners and viewers alike, would you mind giving a bit of background on Merchant Advocate, yourself, what you guys do, all of that?
Absolutely. So Merchant Advocate's been in business for 16 plus years. We have worked in a variety of different industries, everything from the car wash, self-storage, hospitality, um, working with private equity groups and their portfolio companies, all the way up to professional sports teams. You name it, anybody that accepts credit cards for payment. And who we are is we are, and to be very clear, we're not a credit card processor. We are an expense auditor on the credit card payment side. And we work with our clients to expose a lot of the hidden and excessive costs that aren't transparent in a very untransparent industry.
That makes sense. So, you guys, you're not a processor and you sit in between any business, not necessarily just car wash. So, if there's, business owners that own car washes, but other businesses, this is just as applicable as long as you're accepting credit card transactions.
Absolutely. We're agnostic. We just want to work for, we advocate for the merchant. What's interesting is the credit card industry itself is incredibly unregulated. Car wash operators, even other folks, they get calls all the time from processors that will say, hey, look, switch your systems to me and I'll save you money. And it's never apples to apples. Changing systems can be a pain in the neck. Especially in the car wash industry, whether you're with DRB or Micrologic or Sonny's, you can't change because you're tied into certain processors,
Right.
tied into their point of sale systems. So that's where we've been able to be very successful is we're not advocating for somebody to change. All we're doing is trying to optimize based on their volume, based on their industry, optimizing the credit card processing that's going on underneath the hood.
So, Mark, is it fair to say because it's so unregulated and because there's so few standards, essentially what you all are doing is you're saying, hey, you give these guys an inch, they take a mile. What we do is we just come in and make everybody play honest. You don't have to switch anything. You don't have to do it. Is that it?
That's really about what it is. It's crazy. It's almost like Robin Hood, right? You're stealing from the rich to pay for the poor.
Right.
But what happens is because there's no regulatory things, these credit card processors can raise rates on you. They can put fees in there, surcharges, and even miscoding certain things that will, as a merchant, you'd be paying a higher fee. We go in and make sure, I mean, we've seen everything from not only inflated fees and service charges, but made up charges. Things that should be credits or debits, and it's absolutely crazy. And so what we are able to do is through our proprietary technology is identify where those savings opportunities are, take it to the processor, and in a very consultative approach, say, hey, look, these things are out of line, or this was miscoded, or this is inflated based on their industry, based on their volume. When you show them that, they're very positive in reacting because at the end of the day, they don't want to lose your business. They have a reputation. And it's like a kid getting their hand caught in a cookie jar. You know, oh, I didn't see that. But when you're able to exactly show them on their statements, this is wrong or this is inflated, this is where it shouldn't be, they're pretty much, we might not get 100% of what we ask, but we certainly get a good bite back for the client.
So let's talk about that bite back. So obviously, a lot of this has to do with transactional volume and how less than perfectly honest the current processor may or may not be in terms of the systems in place. What are we talking here in terms of, and I think just because of the purview of this call, let's say we've got a single site car wash doing 2 million in revenue and 200,000 transactions a year, which we'll call 175,000 our credit card transactions,
Yep.
just for the
Yep.
heck of it. Well, what are we talking here in terms of savings?
So whether you're a single operator, and by the way, we work with single operators, we work with people with a dozen locations, we work with many clients that have 200, 250 plus locations. So whether you have one, and it's all relative, right? If I can save a single operator a significant amount of money, it's real money to them. And the same on the big side when you have so many locations. But yes, what we're able to do is probably get between 15 and 20% reduction on their fees or rates. Our goal is to cut their overall effective rate. Typically, on a client, it's about 15 to 20%.
15 to 20%. And forgive me. So as we do math, just basic math here, per $1 million, if you're paying, it's basically 15 to 20% potentially of, let's call it 2.5, 3% of that.
Exactly.
So
Exactly.
you could be saving closer to a full percent, call it 80 basis points.
Absolutely. Depending on, how they're set up, we find one of the things that we find in car washes especially is that most of these operators think that I have one agreement and it's all, I might have 10 locations. All of them are under the same umbrella. Well, I will tell you 9 out of 10 car wash operators that we look at, there's a lot of inconsistency in terms of fees and rates across different locations. I mean, it's crazy. They might have 3 or 4 locations that are in great shape, and there might be 3 or 4 locations that are completely inconsistent on where they are. It's it, reading these statements is like reading your cell bill or your cable bill. It's really hard to do, and these processors do it on purpose. And a lot of times, especially in the car wash industry, because there's a subscription-based model, right? Most people are coming in there, they're buying a monthly pass, and there's a reoccurring revenue that you're hitting their credit card every month. We see this in all industries, but especially even in car washes, is that in these reoccurring billing industries, the credit card processors just figure you're not paying attention to this. You're just hitting the cards every month and you're not looking at this. And that's where they tend to sneak in a lot of fees or inflate rates or things like that. And the other thing that we see, especially with car washes in this subscription-based model, is chargebacks.
Yeah.
Chargebacks could be inconsistent, it could be inflated to where they should be. And there's ways to go in some of the things that we talk about to our clients is we go best, we give them examples of how to treat these chargebacks. Because depending on how they're processing it, how they're reacting to them, there might be certain things that we can show them that even accepting a chargeback fee, there might be a way to do it that will cost you less than what it normally would be.
So, Mark, here's something that everything you're saying makes sense, and I'm going to try to refrain from going after the chargeback comment because it's a very touchy subject in this industry. But it's
Yeah.
so funny to me because payment processors and credit card processing as a whole is extremely touchy in this industry. So
Yes.
much so, it's almost as if you get the feeling that these people are almost uh, they're treated as being such fragile sort of relationships.
Mhm.
Heavens forbid, right? You mentioned this, and it's
Yep.
well, we can't get our credit card fees. We can't. Like, we can't screw that up. We're locked. We're like you said, we're
Yep.
locked in. We don't have an option. But it's like, God forbid somebody disrupts that sort of relationship. Is it really that fragile?
It is. And look, at the end of the day, the way we approach this, right, is no point of sale or processors really happy for us to get involved because they know that we understand the industry. We know what's right for their volume, for their industry, and there's so much inconsistency across the board. Again, but we come in with a very consultative approach. Again, I'm not advocating for anybody to move systems, right? I'm not saying, and that's how we approach is like, look, I'm not advocating them to move from point of sale system from A to B. But on the processing, these things should be adjusted because of fairness. And again, we might not get 100% of what we're really asking for, but if we could get 80% of it or what have you, it still could be significant for a single operator to anybody with multi-locations.
Well, Mark, selfishly from our side of the business, it makes a tremendous difference. Every percent does when you're talking about cash flow
Absolutely.
when you go to sell. It makes a huge difference, even if it's right.
Absolutely. Look, at the end of the day, that's why we work with a lot of private equity groups and they introduce us to their portfolio companies, whether they be car washes or other businesses, because if I can save them bottom line incremental savings, it goes 10x on the valuation, right? Because at the end of the day, the way our model works is I'm not taking an upfront fee, cost, fee, retainer, or anything else like that. I typically take a revenue share on the savings. So I have skin in the game to make sure that the operators are being treated right and most effectively, because that's the only way I get paid. And so any savings that I'm able to achieve for a client, it's 100% incremental. Even if I told a client there are some savings there, and ultimately, let's say I couldn't even get any savings from the processor. For whatever reason, they said no. The client is never out $1. They would owe me nothing. So I have skin in the game, just like the merchant does, to try to make the most of where optimize what they're doing.
And Mark, you hit on a really good point here, and I'm I'm cheating when I ask this because you and I have known each other for years now, and
Yep.
we've actually had a client that we've sold, call it a 10-site operator that was using merchant advocates, right?
Yep.
And my question, although I know the answer, but I think it's really important that everybody does, what is the durability in a sale in terms of like, there's no reason why the next buyer, if they want, can keep up the savings, right?
Absolutely. First of all, there's two ways to look at this. One is, again, it's all incremental savings. So even if it changes ownership, the client is still benefiting because we've lowered their overall effective rate. So, and the way our program works as well is it's not a fix it and leave it industry. These processors every quarter add new things into it.
Yeah.
So what we do is we actually monitor the accounts of all these locations. Every single month, we are looking at every statement, every location, every line item to ensure that the savings that we negotiated are maintained and that these guys don't add in additional things down the road. So we can come in, we can get people savings in the short term, but it's really about the long term.
Yeah.
You want somebody looking at your statements every month. Look, you're busy. These guys are busy operating their business. They don't have the time. And we work with Fortune 500 companies. The CFOs don't even understand these statements. That's why we come in and we act as a CFO for them on this side of the business. We get the changes for them up front, but they feel comfortable that there's an insurance policy in their back pocket that somebody's looking at this every single month to ensure that they're in good shape. I've seen this many times where we've had clients, and when the term of our agreement's up, they said thank you. And I go back and I call them in a year and I say, you know what, let me look at your statements again. And I look at the statements and things have happened that they were unaware of, which cost them money because nobody was looking at their accounts on a monthly basis.
It makes a lot of sense to me, a tremendous amount of sense. Now, Mark, you also briefly mentioned this, but I think It's worth repeating. You're in some of the biggest car wash chains today.
Absolutely. If you look at the top 15 operators, we're probably working with half of them. And for two reasons. One, we're achieving savings for them. And two, they have so many locations. Again, like I said, it's physically impossible. We have a proprietary technology that we use. We take their merchant statements, we put it into our system. It helps us identify where cost savings are. There is no CFO or controller that can look at every line item and every statement at every location every month. It's just impossible. So what they really like is not only us getting savings, but they feel really good that somebody's looking at this
Yeah.
line item every single month on their behalf that's an advocate for them.
It makes sense. It makes total sense. And I can imagine those costs do creep back in.
Oh,
But
all the time. It's really crazy because people say, well, that's unfair. How could that happen? But it's an unregulated industry. That's the problem, that there are no regulatory controls on these processors of what they can and what they cannot do. And if you look at the fine print in a lot of these statements, it allows them to do it. But again, because we're consultative in this process and we're not hitting them over the head with a hammer, if we point out the data and able to show them whether it be interchange, fees, service charges, coding errors, they have enough margin. They're building in enough margin here that if they get called to the mat, a lot of times they play ball.
I think they'll be just fine.
Yeah,
Yes. That may
exactly.
be more of an issue of having preconceived notions as to fairness being a thing, but nonetheless,
Absolutely.
yeah, yeah.
Absolutely.
Uh, okay, so I think one question that I originally had when we spoke way back for the
Yep.
first time was, well, is there like a whiplash effect here? Could there be a negative ramification or a risk I'm taking by frauding my processor?
No, they're never going to look. If they're going to raise the rates of the fees on you or certain things, they were going to do that anyhow, right? Um, again, we like to think of ourselves as Robin Hood in a way that, we're going in and identifying it. And again, because there's no whiplash back, I'm never going to do anything that would jeopardize a relationship that a client has with their point of sale or their processor. When we first identify what those savings are, I will have a conversation with the client. I will specifically tell them, this is where we think the opportunities are, and this is what I'm going to do. Do you feel comfortable with that? I have some clients that will say, I have a really good relationship with these guys. Yes, this is fair to ask them these questions and prod. Um, but be sensitive because I have a good relationship. And that's the approach that we take. I have some clients that say, I have no allegiance. I don't care. Tell them that I'm willing to move even. And we do. We have some clients that will even say, look, if there's enough savings here, I'm willing to change. And so we have that leverage as well.
So, Mark, you sent me before this, and we've been talking, we've been rekindling our friendship over the last couple of weeks.
Yep.
And even I was shocked to see the sort of scale and breadth of the private equity groups and the portcos of the private equity groups that you're in. We're not just to further, and I know I'm sounding as though I'm having a recursive conversation here with myself, which I do sometimes, but these are massive groups you're dealing with. You're not talking about mom and pop little, you're talking
Yeah.
about huge entities that you guys are working on behalf.
Yeah, and I can say these names because they've given me the right to say it, so I can. But we work with KKR, we work with Blackstone, we work with Warburg, Carlyle, all these private equity groups. Because again, at the end of the day, we're doing two things for them. One, we're hopefully increasing the valuation of their portco companies by incremental cost savings. So that again, there's nothing to lose here. It's no, they don't have to lay people off. They don't have to do any other cost savings. It's just about optimizing what they currently have. So we've been very successful not only in the larger portcos, but again, all the way down to a single operator. I mean, if I can save a single operator $1,000 a month, that's real money.
Mark,
Um,
I think
you
we
know?
did. I'm thinking back. I don't know if you remember who I'm talking about, but somebody I referred on over to you
Mhm.
did. It was a single site out in Louisiana, and
Absolutely.
he's saving thousands of dollars a month.
Yeah. And that's relative, right? If you have one location and I could save you $1,000 a month. And by the way, we do all the work. The amount of time that they have to put into this is probably about a half an hour. It's talking to me about their program, sending me their merchant statements. I come back to them, I tell them what we're going to do, and then we're off and running. So
And they
if
do
somebody
not have,
came to me and said, for 30 minutes of my time, I can give you $1,000 a month, I'd take the time.
I would hope so. I would certainly hope so. I would very much. Okay, so how does this all work? So let's say
Yeah.
I am an extraordinarily brilliant listener, and I'm
Yeah.
saying, my goodness, does this make so much sense? I think I'll just do this now.
Yeah. So it's a very simple, we have a three-step process that's very simple. The first thing that we say to a client is, look, send us your most recent merchant statements. Ideally, I would love to see the last 3 months from each of your locations. So if you have 10 locations, it would be, 10 locations. Each of those send a merchant statement for the last 3 months. Our team will then do a preliminary analysis at no cost, and we will look for hidden fees, coding errors, surcharges, you name it. Step two, I will come back to you and I will tell you one of two things. Harry, you're in great shape, nothing to do here, and you feel good that a third party has validated that you're in good shape. And I would say, like a doctor's appointment, let's do a checkup in 6 months because it doesn't hurt and we see where we are. Or two, I'm going to say our team has identified that there's some potential savings opportunities there they feel they could reduce or eliminate. If that's the case and we go forward, again, we negotiate with the processor directly to get these costs reduced. Once that negotiation is done, I come back to you, I quantify the savings for you, and I show you how we've lowered your overall effective rate. Every month after that, you will get a statement from us that will show you this is what you would have paid, this is what you did pay based on the changes that we were able to implement. And it's really that simple.
Are merchant statements ever referred to as something else?
Typically it's the merchant statement is which shows all the transactionals that happen in a card. We're not looking at personal information at all. It's literally the statement that the merchant gets every month that really just shows itemized the different transactions and the volume of transactions and what they.
Not a general sales report. You're looking for transaction by transaction.
Yeah, exactly. It's like you get a credit card statement in the mail personally, right? They get a merchant statement either mailed to them or it's in their portal and they can pull that report, send it to us. It's very, very simple.
Makes sense. And it sounds relatively simple, the whole process. So literally, Mark, if
Absolutely.
there are people who, I guess before, because this is a very cut and dry topic here. I mean, I think it's as simple as you're paying fees you don't need to pay. Why don't you
Correct.
not pay it?
It's really that simple. Sometimes people say to me, really, so what's the hitch? There's no hitch. Again, no upfront costs, fees, or retainers. I'm not advocating for you to switch your systems, how you process things, or anything. All we're doing is going in, optimizing where your credit card processing might be off, and then getting incremental savings. And what we look at, there's three major buckets that we look at. One is called the processor fees. This is where they manipulate a lot of the costs. It could be surcharges, fees, inflated rates, coding errors, you name it. The second, where we find most of this, a lot of the savings too, is what we called interchange. Now, interchange is the rates that are set by the banks So they're not negotiable, but they are optimizable. And what I mean by that is there are 400 different credit card types out there. Corporate cards, personal cards, you know, any type of credit card. As they go through the system, we want to make sure that each card type is coded to the lowest possible tier that you should be charged. There's tiers one, two, and three. Many times these processors batch things or they miscode things because they're not making money on it, so they don't really care. So there you're getting charged the higher fees that some of these cards should be qualifying for lower fees. So we go in there and we call it interchange optimization. And we go in there and make sure that everything is coded properly. And then we look at what's called network fees. These are the assessments by Visa, MasterCard, Amex. We want to make sure, based on your volume, based on your industry, that the assessments and fees that they are charging you are in line. Again, not negotiable, but they are optimizable depending on, where you are, how much you're processing, and so forth. So there's three major buckets that we're really looking at.
And the first bucket is where you see the most savings?
Is really the processor fees and interchange are the two of the three biggest buckets, both of them.
I've never heard of having too many middlemen creating any agita or inefficiencies in any process.
That,
So
that's the
this all
problem.
sounds pretty buttoned up to me, Mark.
That's the problem.
Mm.
There's a lot of people that have their hands in it. When you think you're with DRB or you're with MicroLogic or you're with NextWash, whoever it may be on a point of sale, it's really about the processor. It's not about your system. It's not changing any of that. It's what's going on with these processors that and you shouldn't feel bad because it happens in other industries as well. You know, we work with a lot of dentists. They are tied into a point of sale system. All of them are. But we're still able to achieve savings for them because we're looking under the hood at the processor and again, optimizing and making sure that everything is where it should be.
God, this makes a tremendous amount of sense. And despite all the vernacular and terminology being robust, to say the least, it seems pretty simple. It
Yep,
just seems like
it really
asking.
is.
And just to be clear, Mark, you're not going to these guys with a proverbial gun to their head saying, "Hey, reduce the
Oh,
fees," or this is like a, "Hey, can we reduce these?"
yeah, this is, hey, look, when we'll have the data because we know how to read these statements and be able to pick out things in it. And we can say, look, for this particular card type, it should be coded to the lower tier. It's not qualifying. Now, it could be an issue that the car wash operator might be doing as they're putting the information in. So again, if we see that as an issue, we can also recommend, look, if you put the data in this way, you're going to qualify for the lower tier. So it could come from the processor, it could come from the banks, it could come from how they're actually doing things. But combined, there's usually a lot of opportunity to get cost savings and to make things more efficient.
This all makes a ton of sense. Mark, what should we leave people with? What else do people need to know here?
Yeah, I would say the one other thing that we sort of touched on too, if you're a car wash operator and you're looking to also expand, right? Or acquire new car washes. What we've done with a lot of private equity as well is let us help you in the due diligence process. If you are looking to acquire two or three car washes, get their merchant statements. Have us take a look at it. I can tell you that if you go ahead and purchase this car wash, there might be 20% of savings or 10% of savings in their processing that we can fix day one. So you know that is part of the negotiation. That going in, you're negotiating and you're bidding and things like that, but you have something in your back pocket that could help you leverage, getting yourself a better deal or knowing that you can become more efficient once you take it over.
Or not that I have a bias, right?
Yep.
Sounds like it's a great footnoted add back to EBITDA for which the buyer's going to have to pay for.
100%. No question. No question. Not even a question. So that's why we've been very successful with private equity groups. When they're looking to buy a portfolio company, they send us everything in their due diligence process, and we're just another tool in that due diligence process for them.
Goodness knows we're sending them enough info already during diligence. So I think that
Exactly. So there you go. But all I would say is this, is that, in summation, like you said, what do we need to come across? Understand that we know that most car wash operators are locked into point of sale. They don't want to switch. They don't give me many options to switch, so I'm really stuck. That's no excuse. There still is a way to go in and optimize and make sure everything is running efficiently without changing your systems, without changing your processor, without changing your point of sale system. There still can be significant savings. And at the end of the day, having somebody just take a look at that doesn't cost you anything. So it's really a no-lose proposition.
all of this makes a ton of sense. Mark, I can't thank you enough for coming on. Everybody, we will put Mark and Merchant Advocates info down in the description, whatever it is, right?
Absolutely.
We really appreciate this, Mark. This has been fantastic.
Absolutely. Thank you, Harry. Appreciate your time.
Thanks, Mark.